everybody. Welcome to another episode of Revival Town Podcast. I'm Chuck Tate. That's Andy King.
Hey, Chuck. You doing all right, mate?
I'm doing good. It's always better hanging with you.
Oh, yeah. You know, for those that listen to the podcast, you will know that our routine is we do 3 or 4 interviews, depending on who we can get and when we can get them and schedules. But then we always have a bit of Chinese at lunch.
We always have Chinese at lunch.
And we just had a bit of Chinese at lunch, and I'm feeling a bit sluggish.
You know, I'm feeling a little bit sluggish as well. It's been a good day so far.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about our next guest that we'll introduce here in a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, anytime, usually we record 3 episodes, and right after lunch is always, we need a little pick-me-up.
Yeah, you didn't make the coffee. I provide the coffee. You didn't.
I have it. I just got to get you another one. I'll run and get one.
No, you don't need to get me. No, don't worry about it. It's fine.
I still have some left.
I'll stick with my water. Don't worry. No caffeine. Don't worry about it.
Well, I'll take a sip of my coffee.
Well, this week, when we record this, has been a bit of a tough week for the Christian music family. With the sudden death of Mandisa, who, if you don't know who she was with regards to Christian music, she actually came through American Idol.
Yep.
And I do believe she was on the same year or around the same year as Danny Goki, who also went through American Idol.
Right.
I know tributes have been pouring in to, not just from Danny, but so many. Many that have been on the show. Amy Grant had toured with her quite a bit and was very close to her, and others.
I've been surprised by how many people were connected to her.
Yeah.
I mean, she really had a platform. And God used her, and she had a run-in with Simon Cowell when she was on American Idol and demonstrated the love of Jesus to him and shared the gospel. It was amazing.
I think she was one of those artists that people just love to be around,
right?
And so I think that there was a side to her that perhaps most people didn't see, and it was off the stage stuff, even though she toured with so many amazing artists. I saw For King and Country did a tribute. I saw the Newsboys. I saw they actually stopped the next night after the death. They stopped in the middle of the concert and did a whole tribute to her.
Wow.
And it really affected them. And so there must have been some real strong connection there as well. So I know, and when you're hearing this now, it's been a couple of weeks since the funeral has happened. But be praying for those Christian music artists. We often forget that they're people,
right?
And it can be something like that. They're close. These guys are close,
right? And not only that, some of them are dealing with the same things that she dealt with. She battled depression. She wrote a book about it. Her song "Overcomer" and inspired, encouraged so many people. But there are many artists who, once they're off that stage, struggle.
Yeah, and I saw Toby Mac wrote a real powerful tribute to her, because obviously he lost his son to depression and things like that just a few years back, and I think he's been on the journey with her. Nothing's come out on how she died or anything like that, but she has had a journey of that's been public, and it was tough seeing him riding that as well with what he had gone through, So be praying for the Christian music industry at this time, and the American Idol family as well. That it's going to affect a lot of those folks that were a part of that as well. So
Yep. She impacted a lot of people.
Yeah,
larger than life personality, huge heart, and what a voice, huh?
Yeah.
Woo!
Yeah.
And we got a guy who's got a voice today.
Yeah.
He does a lot of digital television. He has a platform as a journalist. and as an author. And I read, he's produced more than 14,000 articles.
That's crazy.
And he's interviewed some really well-known celebrities and artists and people of faith. And he's just good people. This is his third time on the Revival Town podcast. Good stuff.
Yeah. So why don't you take a seat, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this conversation with Billy.
This podcast is part of the Edify Podcast Network. Edify is a faith-inspiring app that brings together thousands of the best Christian podcasts in one place for your listening enjoyment. Cut through the noise and grow your faith by diving into the world's top Christian podcasts today. Download the Edify app for free from the App Store or Google Play, or by going to edify.app. That's EDIFI.app.
All right, everyone, it's time for another conversation on Revival Town Podcast. Our guest today is a returning guest, his third time on Revival Town. Billy Hallowell is a journalist, commentator, and digital TV host. Billy has covered thousands of the biggest faith and culture stories. He's written more than 14,000 articles on faith, culture, and politics. He's interviewed hundreds of celebrities, authors, and influencers. He's the author of 3 books. Last time we talked about his latest book, Playing with Fire, which even inspired a sermon series that we did not too long ago. It's always great talking to you, Billy. Welcome back to Revival Town.
Well, thank you for having me. I can't believe you guys aren't tired of me yet.
Never.
No way.
Never.
No way.
You know, and I love following you on social media. You just have a pulse on everything that's going on. And I love that you use your voice to advance the kingdom, and you don't care what anybody thinks, and I don't mean that in a negative way. Like, I don't care what anybody thinks, but you just are real, and appreciate that, how authentic you are, and you're transparent, and it's just, man, it's great to have you back.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, today we thought we would do something a little different. We'll get into what I feel is your sweet spot, which is culture and what's going on, especially in the US, but also globally as well. But last week, we had a gentleman on Revival Town podcast, Joshua Broom, who has an incredible story of coming from the adult movie industry, getting radically saved, and now has written a book, which, this is why we're mentioning this, you helped him write.
Yes, yeah. It's written by Billy Hallowell and Joshua Broom. So you guys collaborated together, worked together. We'd love just to hear how that went. What was that process like? I'm sure you're a seasoned veteran when it comes to writing, but how cool was that for you?
Yeah, it was, first of all, it was amazing because Josh's story, I always say there are certain stories that prove the gospel, right? And people are always haggling and fighting over it, like, how do you prove that God is real? And, the atheists will say this. And I think you guys know this. I mean, by people's testimonies. I mean, you look at Paul in scripture, you look at the journey he went on, and we have so many people right now in this chaotic culture who are finding Jesus. And Josh is one of those people who obviously went from one of the darkest places you could be, the porn industry. And also, I mean, it's a strange thing to say, but being the most famous, or one of the most quote unquote famous porn stars, abandoning that and then finding Jesus. So working on that story, I love a story where you get to really show how God shines into somebody's life, changes their heart, changes their mind about everything. And that's Josh's story. So, we had a chance to connect actually after an interview that he did with a friend of mine who also was in the adult film industry before finding Jesus. And, she connected us, and, I had him on CBN News where I work, and we just struck up a friendship. So when it came time to talk about working on the book, it was just a natural fit. We had become good friends, and we had a chance to sit down and really kind of hash through those details together. And the book deals with the 7 lies that will ruin your life. And he believed a lot of those lies in his story. And it's just a great testimony to help other people who may be dealing with other things figure out that maybe they're believing some of those lies too.
How tough was that for you when you're doing your own book, you can just write, right? It's coming from you. But this one, you're having to hear the story.
It's not your story.
Yeah, and navigate, right? You're trying to navigate someone to tell their story the best way they can to a crowd that, because of how long he's been a Christian, this crowd is still new to him, right? It's was that tough for you to put yourself in those shoes?
Yeah. It's so funny because I've done this a couple of times now where I co-write or come alongside someone. I'm working on another project now like this. And in my mind, I always think, oh, well, when you're doing the book on your own, all the work, you have to do all the work. It's a lot harder. It's so much easier to partner with somebody else, but it's the exact opposite, as you were stating. You're taking somebody else's story. You almost have to work double as hard because you're taking their story and you're trying to bring your words into it while also conveying their voice. And so with Josh, it was a little easier because he wrote a lot of the book too. So we combine forces, but you want to make sure you're honoring the person by telling the story the way that they want it told. And so it is challenging, but it's a really fun challenge because at the end of the day, and any book is this way. You shouldn't be writing books. This is my view. If you're an author, you should not be writing books because you want fame or money or attention. You should be writing books because you have a message that you believe God wants you to convey. And so we were able to do that really effectively. And he's an easy guy to work with. So it was a really fun project. And I would really encourage people to get the book and to pass it on to other people in their lives because, gosh, culture is so messed up. It's such a crazy culture that somebody like Josh Broom, who grew up and had a normal life and wanted to be an actor, could find himself in the bowels of the porn industry, right? It's so crazy, but you see how these things happen to people. And I hope that the story helps prevent that kind of thing for somebody else. Right.
Well, I read a book. It's called How to Write a Nonfiction Bestseller. I can't even remember who wrote the book. It's not a Christian book, but the one takeaway for me that I think confirms what you just said is this: you don't write a book about something, you write a book for someone. And his book is for someone. It's not just about his story. It's not just about the adult film industry and the impacts it could have on you, but it's for somebody to communicate that God can redeem your story. God can take whatever it is you've been through and still use it for his glory. He can wipe out all the shame, the guilt, all that is associated with our sin. In Jesus, there's no condemnation. And what a great message.
Yeah, no, it is such a powerful message. And I love that because it's so true. And sometimes you're writing the book for yourself because God wants you to learn something while you're writing it. And that I have found that the best literary experiences are ones where I'm actually learning something. And in the past, I came out and talked about a book on evil that I wrote called Playing with Fire, how it taught me a lot about spiritual warfare and what's going on in the world that I wouldn't have learned had God not led me there. So yeah, book writing, I think the world presents it as one thing, but I actually think it really is. It should be more of a selfless quest outside of the what can I learn about this topic, God.
Now I know we're gonna delve deeply into culture in a moment, but are you working on any book at the moment or anything new stirring in you?
Yeah, it's interesting because there are so many things that I want to write a book on that. That'd be a great book, and I'm always thinking about that. But I'm actually helping a pastor right now. His name is Vic Kales. I'm working with him on his book, and he's a preacher who has been, in evangelism for a long time, and helping him put that book together. And I'm finishing that up now. And I have had a number of projects and things that have come up, and I've said no, and I've kind of thought, okay, I want to pray more about this and see. So the sky's the limit right now. I'm looking at a few things, miracles and spiritual warfare and those sorts of topics I'm really captivated by, but also, culture, what's happening in culture right now. I had a book a few years back called Fault Line, and it sort of looked at Hollywood media universities, how they've shaped and reshaped the way that young people think. And I think we're watching that tragically unfold right now, the effects of that. And so I'm looking to revisit that book as well, to potentially re-release it. So there's a number of projects going on at the moment.
You always have something going on, man. You are everywhere. You interview every person. You're obviously working for CBN News. You're always writing and you're just in the mix of what's going on. So it's great to to see your perspective on things. And do you want to jump right into some current events?
Yeah.
Because obviously there really has, you mentioned fault line, man, talk about something we are seeing. There has been this shift happening, but all of a sudden, am I alone in thinking that things seem to be moving at a rapid pace? Am I correct in my thinking there, Billy?
You are 100% correct. It's so interesting. I think of the name of your show, right? And I think of what's happening around us. And you have two dynamics, and I'd love to get your take on this. This is what I think is happening. You have the dynamic of culture rapidly, and about the past 10 years, we've been watching it, but it started way before that. We were removing God from schools in the 60s. The 70s were chaotic. You sort of see the slow moving trajectory, right? You had even 1948, Israel coming back on the map. You had these things happening. But I think the last 5 to 10 years, we really feel it. The culture is completely in chaos. Morals are being thrown to the wayside. People are very confused, right? And what does scripture tell us? Satan is the author of confusion. Confusion is what is abounding all around us right now. And yet at the same time, all of last year into this year, you had these snippets and moments of revival, right? Again, like the name of your show. Yeah. And it started with Damar Hamlin, and it started with, the collapse and the country praying, and it moved into Jesus Revolution, and it moved into historic baptisms. And we can go down the line. Churches are still saying they're seeing historic, or at least, record-breaking numbers of people getting baptized, finding Jesus. And we're watching, there was just a story with Jenny Allen at an event where there were so many people who wanted to be baptized, these young people, that they were bringing in pickup trucks and doing it in the back of pickup trucks, baptizing young people, hundreds of them. So the point is, you have two dynamics unfolding. It feels like the time is near and chaos is unfolding, and yet these pockets of people in the midst of those chaos and all that lying that's been going on, finding the truth. So that's a longer answer than you probably wanted, but those are really interesting dynamics to watch.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's been remarkable to see the pockets of revival and like the embers of revival hitting other places from universities to churches all over. And at the same time, all hell is breaking loose in our country. And it seems like the enemy is, we know, you said he's the God of this world. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He's always looking for people he can devour. But at least since I've been alive, I can't remember a time that is as tense as the one we're living in this moment, as toxic when it comes to the, cancel culture, and really, even in the political parties, you used to be able to get along, and you can't anymore. What we're seeing on campuses with the fact that there are marches and there are banners that say "Death to Jews." How is that even possible?
Yeah. Well, I think it's very interesting when you track back to, we talked about the removal of God, and we've talked about this for years. It's so interesting because Christians have known the problem. We've pinpointed it, but I don't know that we've been able to actually effectively solve it. And I think maybe because we miss the mark sometimes on politics, we get too invested in politics. Then other times we don't get invested enough in picking the right people. We know what the problem is. The problem is the minute you remove God, there's a vacuum that something has to fill. And so we know, we're watching, what is it being filled with? Gender ideology, chaos at schools, total confusion. And these things don't just bubble up and become little pockets of people who you can just say, oh, believe what you want to believe. It becomes a situation where if you don't embrace the confusion, you're a bigot, you're hateful, you're awful, you're a bad person. And guess what? We're going to come for your career now. We're going to cancel you. And so because we haven't effectively maybe engaged, and look, this is not just a materialistic, hey, here's what's going on, the material world, all this is just happening in front of us. There is a very spiritual dimension to all of this. And that's why I think we're seeing those dual dynamics of the chaos and of the revival. I think the chaos it's really palpable. My goodness, I have a couple of stats in front of me here. And I want to share them because I think it actually pinpoints exactly how confused young people are. And because of that removal of God, it's affecting the younger generations the most. But on this Israel issue, it's really interesting because YouGov and The Economist, they put out a poll back in December, and they found, and maybe you guys saw this, 18 to 29-year-olds, they were looking at that group of people. So young adults, 20% of them believe that the Holocaust never happened, that it's a myth. Okay, so 20% of the young people, and this is a small sample size, it was a couple hundred people, so you could argue maybe the numbers are a little off, but I don't think so. 20% believe the Holocaust never happened. Another 30% were unsure of what they thought. So you're talking about 50% of young people in America. I mean, I was shocked when I saw this poll, being either saying it's a myth or being unsure if it was true, which essentially says it might be a myth.
Yeah.
You also have, and I'll just throw one more out, 33%, and this survey just came out from Summit and from RMG Research, 33% of 18 to 20-year-olds do not believe that Israel has a right to exist as a nation in the Middle East. 33%. So how do you get there? You get there because there's mass confusion. And yeah, I'll stop there, but we've removed God and it's created a crazy memory hole.
Wow. So how do, and this is the $1 million question, but how do you then go about educating people about the importance of Israel?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the battle right now, right? And I think, I guess I can do this on this show, hyper spiritualizing, which is important, I think, on these issues, because what happened in the 1930s and 1940s, the Holocaust happened, right? Again and again and again, we've seen throughout history the Jewish people, the attempt to wipe them out, which obviously that attempt is coming from the enemy. It's coming from evil. This is not, it's the same spirit, right, that we've seen again and again cropping up with Hamas, with Iran, with all of these countries. They want to wipe Israel off the map. Why? Why is this a consistent theme? And so there's the spiritual conversation we have to have. But I think, one of the big things we have to do is ask questions. I think we've gotten a lot of us want to argue, and I have to pull myself back from this, right? You're at a dinner table, you're at Thanksgiving, and you're, non-Christian or, family member who has a different political view. They start to say things to you and you start to engage and argue with them. I think we have to get better at, like Socrates, asking the questions, right, of the people. Well, why do you think that? Well, what makes you think that Israel's trying to wipe out all the Palestinians? Why do you believe that? When you start to ask questions, it's very, very easy to educate people, because you start to realize, like some of these young people we're watching on the news who don't even know why they're at some of these protests, that they actually don't know. They're acting on emotion or on information that isn't complete. And so we have to start engaging one-on-one. And I think too, making sure we understand, right, that we have the right information. So it starts with us. And then I think it starts with that engagement and doing what you guys are doing, being present in media, being present in, my goodness, universities, public schools, media, and Hollywood. These are the areas where all of this chaos has been perpetuated on young people, and we need to have a presence there instead of retreating, which I think is what we've been doing for far too long. So that's a lot. I gave you a lot there, but I think that last part's really important.
Yeah.
Well, I think the other side of that is we're seeing an increase in faith-based films, and people are going to see those films. I think there is a percentage of people out there, they're tired of woke ideology. They're tired of all this. And I love what you said about questions, because questions are good, right? And I finished reading a book by Lisa Childers called The Deconstruction of Christianity, and we're doing a series, and we're talking about these things, because I feel my responsibility as a pastor is to address the questions that people have, because I'm grateful for those who are using their voice, and I'm disappointed in those who are remaining silent, because I think we have a responsibility. And just the boom in the faith film industry is an indication that there is a group out there, they want the truth. And one of the things that Elisa brings out in the book is even Jesus asked questions. When you look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus asked more than 300 questions. So there is a difference between asking a question in objectively and wanting an answer, and there's a difference between that and asking a question as a means to try to deceive somebody. And Paul said in Colossians chapter 2, verse 8, don't let anyone capture you with empty philosophies and high-sounding nonsense that comes from human thinking and from the spiritual powers of this world rather than from Christ. So what's your thoughts on that?
No, I think that is spot on. And I love what you said about the reason for asking the question, right? You know, instead of having this argument back and forth and fighting with somebody, and there are moments that we have to make points, right? That's fine. When you start to ask people questions because you genuinely want to understand, if somebody says to me, let's talk about abortion, for instance, right? If somebody says to me, and I've had this happen, a pro-choice person will say, I'll say, well, you know, what do you think about a woman having an abortion at 8 months? Well, that's murder. I've heard this before. A pro-choice person say, well, that's murder, or that's not right. Oh, that's too far along. Okay. And there's a small percentage of people on that side who would say it doesn't matter, but most people would say that goes way too far. Okay. Well, what makes that go too far? Why do you think that's too far into a pregnancy? And you start to ask those questions and you start to realize if you get to the place, well, okay, you think it's wrong at 8 months, but why isn't it wrong at 4 months if it's wrong at 8 months? What changed? You start to ask these questions and it puts that other person in a position where they actually have to think about why they're saying what they're saying. They can't just parrot what Planned Parenthood told them or what they've heard somewhere else. They actually have to think it through. And so I think we have to be smart about that, not to do it in a way where we're demeaning somebody or putting them down, but to do it in a way that maybe for the first time, they're actually being forced to think about what it is they say they believe. And you'll often find that people's perspectives will change, or they'll at least realize there's some weakness maybe in what they're arguing. And I gave an issue there. I just want to point out the most important thing that we need to be focused on is getting people saved, getting people to heaven, because at the end of the day, we can change an abortion position. Look, you go to the March for Life, you're going to see atheists who are pro-life. You're going to see all sorts of groups of people. And I'm glad that they're pro-life. That's great. But if they're not heading to heaven, if they're not right with God, then okay, great, you have that viewpoint, but why don't we change your whole perspective, right? Why don't we get you to understand that you matter to God and he loves you? And then those other perspectives will change alongside with that.
Yeah, that's good. Wow. Go ahead.
No, go on.
All right. I had somebody approach. It's been a few years ago. And we're both just chomping at the bit, ready to go here. I had somebody approach me. It's been a few years ago. And he just walked up and he just said, hey, you're a pastor, right? And I said, yeah. He said, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. He said, do you believe in the devil? He said, I know you believe in God. You're a pastor, but do you believe in the devil? I said, of course. And he says, I don't. And I said, well, can you tell me why? And he didn't really, he wasn't prepared for me to ask him that. He just was going to share it. I don't believe it. And I asked him why, and it wasn't a real solid answer. And I said, well, let me tell you why I believe there's a devil, and you don't have to believe like me, but I'm just gonna answer your question. And I went through and I unpacked it, and he ended up coming to church, and they came to our church for a couple of years and got plugged in and was serving, and all just from just having some good dialogue, answering some questions.
Yeah.
I didn't go at him, and I wasn't trying to win an argument. Right, I was trying to win a person.
Yeah, that's good. Ooh, look at you.
I think there's a difference.
That's
right?
the thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's really
Absolutely.
good, Billy, what, you are definitely in the midst of seeing things and probably seeing things that most folks don't. And you've mentioned Israel, you've mentioned pro-life and things like that, but what are the things that keep you up at night now with regards to culture?
Oh, I think for a long time, there were certain issues I preferred to not talk about. And it's funny, we talk about the things that we stay silent on, and you kind of hope some things are going to float away. They're not going to stick. And unfortunately, what we're watching is some really bad things have stuck, right? And the thing that I think has been the most disturbing to me has been watching how the world, when it comes to kids especially, has been willing to sacrifice children in every way, whether it's abortion, but the transgender issue, I think for me, has become one where I no longer have a problem speaking on it. I never had a problem speaking on it, but I thought, well, I can avoid this because it's not going to be this thing. We're not going to be at a place where we have children, going through this, right? And how naive of me to have thought that. I think it was more wishful thinking. I think in the back of my mind, I knew where we were heading. That keeps me up at night, that the deceptions that we're seeing are not just affecting adults, but they're affecting young people. And it matters even if it's an adult. If somebody finds themselves in a position where they've been encouraged to do something that potentially prevents them from ever having children, from being healthy for the rest of their life, potentially. We don't really know anything about these drugs that we're pumping into people. And the idea that we're willing to do that, probably because there's a profit to it, let's be honest, is so horrific to me. So that's really bothered me a lot. And I think watching a lot of Christians still be afraid to address it. And I understand why we're afraid to address it. You're going to be canceled, right? People are going to come after you. But I think, again, our posture should be one of love. We're not attacking that issue because we want to be rude to people or mean to people. It's because we're hearing stories. I mean, I'm hearing stories. I just hosted an event for Washington Times where I had two people who were formerly identified as transgender, whose lives were very much disrupted. One of them, a female, she was an adult when she attempted to transition to another gender, which you can't really do, but attempted to do it. And she can never have children. She's had to try to rebuild her life physically through surgery to try to fix the surgery she already had. So I could go on and on about it, but I think it is one of the most disturbing things that as a culture, we're so dumbed down that we're willing to just look past and ignore. And so that would be the big one for me.
Let me ask you a question about that. Do you feel like in the next, whether it's 5 years or 10 years or even 15 years, there is going to be a generation of people that have had transgender related surgeries that are going to be angry at parents and teachers and even physicians that sold them this?
You're going to have at least some people, right? Right now we already see people suing. We've got a number of young people who have grown up, who have made these decisions, who have gone through these things as teenagers, underage with parental consent. And there's a big debate, about, well, the parents should have known better. Look, I agree, and I wish that were the case. I wish the parents would have known better. But the reality is you're trusting doctors, you're trusting medical professionals to give you advice, to tell you the truth, right? And a lot of these parents are being told, if you don't do this, your children will kill themselves. If you don't do this, it's going to end their lives. And so when you have doctors and medical professionals telling you that, and you're a scared parent dealing with an issue that you don't know what to do with, you're probably going to, for many people, I think for a Christian, most of us wouldn't, but you're probably going to listen. So yeah, to answer your question, I do think you're going to see more and more people rise up, sue, and push back on this, trying to hold the doctors accountable. And the doctors should be accountable for this. They absolutely, everybody should be accountable for it. I'm not one to try to blame somebody else for someone else's actions, but the medical professionals are the ones that are actually facilitating this and finalizing it, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Oof. Yeah, it's crazy. Just last night, me and my wife put on a show, and it didn't last long at all, because within the first few minutes, the whole thing was this guy was going on a trans dating website, and I'm like, I didn't even know that was out there. Like, it's crazy, like where we've got to, and it was off immediately, and we're like, that is where culture has got to. Yeah. They're making it normal.
Right.
Yep.
That's the goal.
Desensitization with everything. And originally, the LGBTQ community was, no, we just want the same rights that any married couple would have. And obviously, their agenda was much more than that. And we're seeing that play out right now. But let me switch gears a little bit, Billy. You've had the opportunity to interview a lot of people, unique people, lots of different celebrities. Who are some of the people that you've interviewed that people watching and listening would be familiar with that you really enjoyed?
Yeah, there's a couple of people recently. Gary Sinise, he was in Forrest Gump. Gary Sinise, we just had him on. His son died after a really tragic cancer battle, and some people might not realize this. There were some headlines about it a couple months back. He'd passed away in January. And Gary is a Catholic. His son was a Catholic, and it was interesting. I'd never talked with him before, but the thing about Gary Sinise is this is an actor who's been in all sorts of TV shows and movies that people know. He's been around forever, but the big thing he does is helping veterans, right? Helping people in need and their families. And so here's this guy, and I'd encourage people to go to CBN News' YouTube channel, look it up. We have a fairly long interview with him, about 40 minutes, talking about his son, their journey through cancer, but also what motivates him to help veterans and their families, and how that quest of helping them really helped inspire his own quest to deal with his son's illness when he needed help, right? People came alongside him. So that was a really powerful interview. And then another one, Danica McKellar from the Wonder Years. You may remember her. So Danica McKellar, she, after the Wonder Years, she went on to write some books for kids, math books, and she's back to acting again. But it's interesting because she became a Christian a couple of years ago. Not even about 2 years ago now, actually. Wow. And hearing her journey, it's very rare that you get to talk to somebody who's just gone through that journey and they're willing to talk about it so openly. And so when we talked last year, she had just read the Bible for the first time in a year. She had gone through the whole thing. And so, we have that on video too at CBN News. And so we get to talk to a lot of great people. And she'd be another one. And the third one I'd mention is Rob Schneider.
Yes.
Now, Rob Schneider also on a journey back towards Catholicism, which he grew up with, but this is a guy who talks a lot on politics, but it was very interesting because the interview was very much focused on his need to forgive people after COVID. He was so angry at how Hollywood and the media handled COVID that he was lashing out a lot, and talking about how coming back to his faith helped him to reorient and to forgive. And so, really, really powerful conversations with all three of them.
Wow.
Amazing.
This was going to be one of my big three questions, but I think we won't do the big three. We'll just do them now, because is there someone that you wish you could interview that you haven't yet?
Gosh, that is an interesting one. Let me think. I mean, yes, I am sure that there are. Gary Sinise was actually on that list, by the way, because I had tried for years and I could just never. He just doesn't do a lot of interviews, right? So, but it was actually a mutual friend who connected us. It's so funny how often that has to be the way that you make these things happen because it's so difficult. I would love to sit down with some of these people who, as Christians, we've sort of held them up because they've talked about Jesus a couple of times, or, like a Justin Bieber, or, I mean, my goodness, even a Kanye West, who right now there's some very tragic headlines around Kanye West and the things he's apparently getting into. But because I'd love to understand how people sort of land where they are, right? Justin Bieber has some progressive things he does, some secular things he does that come in that are confusing to me. But the big one I would say actually is Chris Pratt. I think Chris Pratt would be a very, very interesting interview to really understand what he really believes and thinks, because I think it's been a little confusing for people, but he does seem to be a Christian at his core. He talks about it. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine who we've had on the podcast before, Rob Osborne, who's he's the youth pastor with Chad Veach at Zoe Church in LA, and I always remember him telling me the story of he was assigned to get Chris Pratt in and out of church on Sundays just because Chris didn't want to be a distraction to church. He didn't want to be signing autographs in the middle of worship, and so a lot of these guys, they will come in during the first song, sit, and then leave during the last song after the sermon, just to avoid the whole paparazzi feel, even within people within church. You know what I mean? And so I always remember that, they have to do things differently. Another one I remember, I'm good friends with Martin Smith, who was lead singer of Delirious, and him and Matt Redmond every few months have to create a service essentially for Bear Grylls, and Bear Grylls in the UK would be like a Chris Pratt in America, where he can't walk into a church because it's going to be craziness. And so Bear has 3 or 4 homes around the UK, and Martin and Matt create these nights of worship. Bear will bring his friends in, and just so he can have church.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Funny.
Yeah. So
you have to think about those things. I mean, and I think it's noble to not want to be a distraction, you know, for Chris Pratt to not want to do that. You know, it's not a normal way to live. And I don't really think God intended for us to live to have the focus be on us, right? I think the focus is supposed to be on him.
Right.
So that's why you see so many of these people really struggle unless they live a very normal life and they intentionally have to check themselves constantly, right?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you have any insight on another individual that seems to be on a newer faith journey? In fact, I just read today that he's going to be baptized as Russell Brand. Do you have any insight on his journey?
You know, I don't, but I will tell you this. I think it's very interesting how God does things right now. I know there's all sorts of allegations against him, you know, and we'll push that all to the side, right? Because what you have here is a guy who, as far as I was always concerned, was pretty vulgar and annoying. He always annoyed me. I didn't find him funny. And yet you're watching him become very insightful and talk about faith, very faithful, it seems, right? And now he's getting baptized. He's doing all these things. But you have a situation where he was married to one of the biggest pop stars in the world, Katy Perry. Katy Perry, who started out as a Christian singer, right?
Yeah.
And her parents are evangelists and preachers still to this day.
Yeah.
And obviously don't see eye to eye, I'm sure, with their daughter on the way that she lives, but they seem to have a good relationship, you know, and they love their daughter. And so you have the two of them, obviously they divorce. Katy Perry has moved on, has a child with somebody else, and doesn't appear to be back in the faith in any way, right? But now you have the guy who was married to her, who was the complete opposite of faith, now coming into faith. It's such a strange dynamic in so many ways, and you just wonder, what was God doing in all of this, obviously, to bring him to this place where he feels like baptism. So he's another person, actually, I've had on a list for a long time that I would love to have a conversation with, because I think he's just a really interesting person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree. I follow Russell online, you know, on Instagram, and very intellectual. Not just like there's a difference between, I feel, a whim to try this church thing out, and then someone who has really delved into the scriptures and the teachings of Christ. And so it's been a crazy journey to watch, and I know the allegations are out there, and like he said, hey, I was messed up. I mean, he, you know, that wasn't anything that he hid way back when he was messed up. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how all of that, his journey and what's being done outside of that as well, will come together for sure.
Right. Well, I texted him, "Stay strong, brother." Okay. No, but hey, Billy, you talked about what God is doing. What's God doing in your life? You know, and I don't know if this is something that you talk about, but you know, I know that you have put it out on X, or Twitter, which is now X. You know, that your daughter, she's been through some physical things with her spine and her back, and I've prayed for her along with many others, and it seems like God's really done a work in here. But what's God doing in you and your family?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd love to talk about that for a minute, because I think, you know, miracles are such a complicated thing, because not everybody gets what they want, right? And there's we could do a whole show, and you probably already have, on, you know, obviously how God works, and that, you know, I won't even get into all of it now, but I will tell you, we should always pray for and hope for the miracles that we want, even if we don't get the end result that we want. And so my 8-year-old, when she just turned 6, she was like, literally just turned 6. They were at a physical, both of my kids, and they were checking the backs of both kids. My older kid was 9 at the time, so that's when they started to check for scoliosis. My wife had scoliosis, so I don't know why we hadn't really thought a lot at that point about it. My 9-year-old was fine. My just turned 6-year-old was not fine. The pediatrician said immediately, something doesn't look right with her back. You need to get her to a specialist. And so when we got her to the specialist, her curve in her spine was already at about 34 degrees, which is a significant curve for an older kid. But when you're that young and you haven't grown at all, that's a dangerous curve, because if you cross 40 degrees, they're going to start talking surgery, right? They're going to start looking to do surgery. And I had no idea how serious scoliosis can be. If it gets to a certain degree, you can't breathe anymore. It can be a very, very, now that's rare, but it happens to people.
Right.
And so we immediately went from just this normal, healthy kid to a kid who was in a brace 21 hours a day, a hard brace, and we had a significant change in her life, obviously, most importantly, and all of our lives. And so, but I will tell you, miracles still happen. I fully believe it's a miracle. At her last back scan, she was at just under 10 degrees. So in about 2 years, having the curve reduce, and I believe it's 100% prayer. So thank you so much for praying. Please keep praying. Yeah. We need to keep it where it is and get it even better. But they would, if she finishes, when she turns 15, if her curve is at this degree, they would never do surgery. That's not even an option on the day. They wouldn't even do it. So we're just amazed. She has seen a chiropractor. We've gone some other routes that I think have helped along with the prayer, but it is 100% a miracle. The doctor said you don't see this kind of correction normally.
Wow, praise the Lord.
Just keep
good
praying.
Good stuff.
That's great. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, Billy, would you mind praying for us? I know that you've touched on some topics right today, and people may be out there just struggling with trying to get their head around what's going on in Israel, or pro-life, or the trans stuff, or what you've touched on a lot of things. Could you just lead us in prayer a little bit for us?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. Lord, I would just pray right now for anybody listening, watching this, Lord, for peace, that you would bring peace in everybody's heart, and also just discernment, Lord. There's so much going on around us, so many lies, so much confusion, and it's a really intense year, Lord. It's an election year, and you know how that goes, Lord. People get worked up and upset, and we're all guilty of that at moments. I would just pray that you would give us the peace, the strength, the discernment, the ability to engage with other people in a way that shows your love for them while also not compromising the truth that you have set into motion and solidified through your word, Lord. Just draw us all closer to you and help us to see the truth for what it is in every circumstance, every situation, every issue that we talked about today, Lord. Just be with us, guide us, expand our hearts to see people more like you see them, Lord, so that we can love others in loving you in the process, Lord. We thank you for this podcast. I pray for these guys, Lord, that you continue to bless others through the work that they are doing. And we just thank you, Lord. I pray for their families. In the name of your son, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Billy.
Amen. Well,
thank you.
Well, Billy, I know people are going to want to connect with you. Obviously, you're involved in a lot of things. What are the best ways? 2 questions, really. What are the best ways for people to follow what you are doing? And then, like work, CBN, that type of stuff. And then what are best ways for people to follow you individually, books, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. BillyHallowell.com, which is going through some upgrades, so there'll be some more information on it. It's a little dated in certain areas, but if you go on BillyHallowell.com, I have a Substack there under blog. If you click that, you can sign up for the Substack, and I kind of put everything there.
Okay.
So I'm kind of aggregating everything there, but I'd encourage people, CBN News, Christian Broadcasting Network, get the app. You get the news there every day. We've got constant video coming out on our YouTube, and I do probably 5 or 10 video interviews there a week. But if you go over to BillyHallowell.com, you'll be able to kind of get all of it there. And yeah, I would just encourage you to do that. And also, if you have anything you want to say to me, if you reach out to me through the website, I look at every message that comes through, and would appreciate that. So always happy to hear from people.
And that's through your website or through CBN?
Through my website.
Okay.
My website.
Great. Well,
right,
Billy, we want to thank you so much for coming on to Revival Town again. We look forward to it. When I saw your name pop up on the email that you had accepted for the Zoom call, I was like, yes, because we really do enjoy having you on. So,
well, you guys are the best. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We look forward to the next time.
Yeah. So
absolutely. Number 4. Let's make it happen.
Yes,
let's go.
Thank you, Billy, for coming on to Revival Town.
Thank you.
Okay. Man, it's always a good time connecting with Billy Hallowell.
Oh, man. You want to know what's going on in the world? He's the one to talk to.
Yes, absolutely.
And not only know what's going on in the world, but also with a Christian perspective.
Yes.
And that's different. There's a lot of people you could talk about culture to.
Yep.
But if you want to know about culture, but through the eyes of someone who's a believer and what we believe in and truth,
yes,
he's the right guy to have on. So
yes,
we're glad that we were able to have Billy on again.
Have him back for the third time.
Yeah.
And it won't be the last time.
No, it won't. No, it
No.
won't. He's so good. So
Good stuff. Thank you, Billy.
Well, we are going to go into Tate and his mate. You know what this is.
This is where I get to be a plonker.
The ultimate plonker is going to... I sent you that this week. I can't remember what...
I can't remember
either, but I just sent back plonker.
Yeah, plonker. There was a video where somebody was using the word plonker.
That's right. Oh, it was Ellie.
Oh, you're right.
Ellie
Who's gonna be
Linebear.
on yeah.
So anyway, this is where I throw an English word or phrase or rhyming Cockney slang to Mr. Tate. So that's why it's called Tate and his mate. These are words that are used in England but not over here in America.
Right.
So I'll put it into context.
Okay.
All right.
I knew you would.
I love, especially during the winter months,
Yeah.
I love a good satsuma.
You love a good satsuma.
Satsuma. A good satsuma.
Can you spell it for me?
Oh, man, I knew you were going to say it.
Are you saying sack or sat?
Sat. S-A-T.
Oh,
satsuma.
Satsuma.
Yeah.
So you love a good satsuma.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say nap.
No, that's a kip.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I'm the kip king. Oh man,
satsuma.
I get a kip in every Sunday afternoon. A satsuma.
Well, most people have a good kip on Sunday morning when you're preaching.
Oh, I walk right into those, don't I? Oh man.
Oh, satsuma.
Satsuma. You love a good satsuma?
Love a good satsuma.
Oh, is that like after lunch when you go in the bathroom? Sat.
Satsuma.
A good satsuma.
You're not gonna get this. You're not gonna get this.
Is it? I have no idea. Is it? It's like
Let me put it this way:
is it a television show?
You can put a satsuma on the table.
You can put a satsuma on the table. You love a good satsuma. A good tea or coffee?
That's no.
Okay.
You give up?
Yeah, I do.
A satsuma is a tangerine.
Whatever.
You know what a tangerine is, right?
Yeah, I would have never.
Like orange.
I would have never guessed that ever.
Yeah, satsuma.
I would have never guessed it. Even if you said it grows on trees, I wouldn't have guessed tangerine. I love a good tangerine. Okay. Okie dokie.
Oh man. Well, there you go.
Woo, let's discuss fruit.
Well, let's say you put it on the table in the fruit bowl.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I get it. Yeah, good. Way to stump me.
There you go.
I was not even close.
You haven't had many this year.
I'm struggling.
I know.
I need to get that Brent box. That's what's holding me back.
That's what it is. That's what's it. Well,
all right, man. Good
we want to thank everyone for tuning in, listening, watching. A lot of people jumping on the YouTube stuff. So
yeah,
that's an easy way to share on Facebook. So if you're watching, just hit that share and get people watching us every week. It's scary, really. And but we just want to say thank you for being with us on this little journey of Revival Town podcast.
Love the journey. Could you let's stop and let's just unpack a little bit for those listening.
Are you taking the rip out of me?
No,
taking the mick? Taking the mick out of me?
I'm gonna start throwing satsumers at me.
Oh, wow.
No, man, it's good stuff. I love doing this.
Yeah. So why don't you close out the show?
All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you for watching. Now go to the store and get a good satsuma.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Revival Town Podcast. Make sure you're following us on social media and remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, head on over to revivaltownpodcast.com.